Hi y'all, Dixie here. Today I want to share with you a presentation that I gave back in October at a workshop down in Texas. Just to give you a little background info, I've been listening to a podcast called the Survival Podcast for like 6 years, and I listened to it a lot while I was through hiking the AT. The creator's name is Jack Spirko, and I know the Survival Podcast kind of sounds like a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist or whatever, but he is definitely not that. In fact, he encourages, thinking for yourself. He encourages self-reliance, and his motto is helping you live a better life if times get tough or even if they don't. So it's not this like doomsday prepper type of stuff. It's just really learning to be self-reliant and take care of yourself and enjoy, learning skills that many of us have lost over the years. He covers topics from guns to gardening and, really everything in between. And he's just really encouraged me a lot in my life listening to his podcast to just kind of stop putting things on the back burner and to just go for it. So anyway, I got to interview on his podcast and I was so excited about it, and I'll include that link in the show more below so that you can listen to it if you choose to. But anyway, when we were talking, when we got done, he mentioned something about the workshop and, would I be interested in being a presenter? And I was like, oh my God, of course I would. So I carried my little self down to Texas and gave a presentation. And I mean, I can't explain the type of community that's around TSP, the Survival Podcast. It's a community that I've never felt so much like myself in, except for the AT. So the AT community and the Survival Podcast community just kind of like are my real friends, which makes sense because, I created the name Homemade Wanderlust based on my desires to homestead, and I grew up gardening with my grandparents and everything in Cannon, and so I love all of those things, but then I also have this strong desire to travel or wanderlust. So it really makes sense that for me these two communities feel like home. Anyway, this video is geared more towards that crowd, the self-reliance community, but I still thought that y'all might enjoy watching it or get something from it. So without further ado, here is my presentation from the Survival Podcast Workshop in Texas. All right, so just to give you a little background information on the Appalachian Trail so you can understand kind of what this gear has been through. What is the Appalachian Trail? Well, it is a footpath that spans from Georgia to Maine. It goes through 14 different states, and the year that I hiked it, it was 2,189.2 miles. It changes a little bit every year. Yeah, that 0.2 matters. I heard somebody chuckle. But so it changes a little bit every year, due to rerouting the trail or, for different reasons. So how do you know you're on the trail? Well, it's marked by white blazes, so they can be on rocks, trees, or fence posts. Like you can see, there's just like a 2x6 white rectangle. And that way okay, I'm still on the path. All right, so it starts, well, depending on which direction you go. If you're a no-bow, so northbound, it starts in Georgia at Springer Mountain. And that was me on my first day, like, wait a minute, am I really doing this? Because let me back up. I had never been on an overnight backpacking trip before this. So this is my one and only backpacking trip right here. And it was an intense one. But this is the final summit point in Maine, in Baxter State Park, and that's Mount Katahdin. So that's like the typical pose. If you've thru-hiked the trail, you're like, yes, I did it. And so a little more sure of myself at the end. All right, so when was it created? Well, back in the 20s, Benton McKay was standing at this fire tower that's actually on the AT in Vermont. He was looking out at the Vermont wilderness, and he was like, we should have a trail that allows people to go through the woods for thousands of miles and, never see, other people and society and all of that. And then there was this young buck that came in, Myron Avery, and while Benton McKay was kind of like the dreamer, Myron Avery was like the one that made things happen. So they kind of butted heads because Myron Avery wanted the trail to go through towns so that people could get off and resupply, or maybe just do a section of the trail and things like that. So it took both of these guys to make it happen, even though, they didn't necessarily agree on the end vision. And in the 30s, it was created, or finished, completed. All right, so why in the world would anybody want to hike the Appalachian Trail and be in the woods for 6 months? Well, I mean, why not, Well, there are a lot of folks out there for different reasons. Most of the people, I would say, are like 25 and younger or 50 and older, because you've got high school graduates, you've got people who've retired, you've got people who've just gotten divorced, you've got people who've just gotten married and they're going out there for their honeymoon, so it's a real test. And then you've got people like me who are 30 and having a midlife crisis at 30 that just, quit their job and go hike. But no, my dream of hiking the AT started when I was at the old age of 5. And this is at Newfound Gap, so on the Tennessee-North Carolina border, and I was there with my grandparents vacationing, and I was like trying to read the sign, and I'm like, Mom's like, Appalachian Trail, and I'm like, well, what is that? And she said, well, that's where people walk from Georgia to Maine, and I'm like, well, can we do that? And she was like, no, we can't do that right now. She's like, someday when you get older, you can do that. And I was like, well, I will. So 25 years later, there I am. My grandparents are gone now, but that was like, oh, Nene and Papa and I were here, so. All right, so who cares? Like, why am I here talking to y'all about backpacking gear? Well, if some of y'all have like bug out bags or 72-hour bag or bob or whatever, blah, blah, you want to call it, then some of this gear might be useful to you because it's pretty much lightweight, durable, practical, and compact. So some of this might be of use to y'all, for that purpose. Also, practice makes perfect. Yeah, it's better to bug in, but if you do have to go somewhere and leave and, be on foot, then what better way to practice than backpacking with all of your gear? And then all of that aside, sometimes it's just really good to get out in nature and kind of reboot your mind. I mean, your mind is a much more noisy place than you would think until, because you've got all these everyday distractions. And I don't know if y'all catch yourself waiting in a line somewhere and you're like, oh, what's going on Facebook? Oh, cool, so-and-so's messing with their bees today, and you just don't allow yourself the time in your own mind. So when you get out there in the woods, you do. And it's a great thing to do with your family. So, all right, so if you're going to be going somewhere, you got to take care of your feet. One of the things, side note, that I recommend if you're going out in the woods for a while, a bouncy ball, a tennis ball, something to like massage your feet. That's great to roll your feet out. But anyway, so footwear is a big deal. Now in the backpacking world, folks argue about gear. I mean, it's just like to the death, arguing over, for example, boots versus trail runners. All right, so there are people who are just really like, boots are the way to go. And then other people are like, come on, get with the times, trail runners. So I started out with a pair of boots because I'm like, well, it's more traditional footwear. And they offer ankle support, which I didn't know, but I didn't really need that. So, you think like, yeah, they have ankle support, but your ankles might not even need it. They're more durable than trail runners. They're more protective. So if you kick a rock, it's going to hurt less with a boot on. The cons, they take forever to dry. So if your boots get wet, which they will if you're out there for a while, they just take a long time to dry. They're like clunky and clodhopperish. I just, I don't know. And they're heavier. So after a week, I developed tendonitis in my right Achilles from the boot drumming on my ankle. Now, they were properly sized and everything. I don't know why it was just one ankle. Maybe it's the way I walk, but I realized boots aren't going to work for me. So I swapped to trail runners. And they're lighter than boots, like I said. And I don't know if y'all have heard that saying, 1 pound on your foot is like 5 pounds on your back. So they're similar to tennis shoes. So if y'all are used to tennis shoes, you'll be used to those. They have a more aggressive tread. They dry a lot faster, and some folks like the Gore-Tex ones. But personally, even if it's cold, if I'm going to be out there for a long time and there's a chance of them getting wet, I'd rather them not be Gore-Tex. Now, you're going to have less miles, not the coach, on your trail runners than boots. So boots are recommended about 1,000 miles. They need to be replaced. And trail runners about 500 miles. And darn nabbit, I didn't bring them in here. But anyway, so my trail runners, I had like my toe hanging out and everything. And I'm like, well, this isn't a fashion show. I don't need to replace them as long as there's still tread on the bottom. Wrong. The support goes out in them. And I ended up with plantar fasciitis, which is like that tendon right here in the bottom of your foot. And that makes it hard to hike. So don't do that. Replace them. All right, shelters. On the AT, the most common shelter you're going to see is a tent. This is my 2-person Big Agnes Fly Creek UL2, which means 2-person. Yes, 2 people will actually fit in there, or you and your pack. And this is like the vestibule rainfly deal here. And then you can buy the footprint. And this is one of the things I'm talking about, skimping on, cutting corners. You can buy the footprint, which I think was like 70 or 80 bucks, or you can buy a piece of Tyvek that fits under your pack. And yeah, it's crinkly when you first get it, but if you wash it a couple times, it's less crinkly. So, but with a tent, they vary in size and weight. They can be really, really heavy. I know a guy that hiked the whole trail with a Walmart tent that cost 50 bucks and it weighed like 4 pounds. This one weighs 2 pounds, 5 ounces, and the 1-person version weighs 2 pounds, 1 ounce. So the extra 4 ounces was worth it for the room. They don't require much skill to put up. There are some that you can set up using trekking poles, but when I went to get my tent, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, so just give me something that will go up every time, They have ones that, this is not completely freestanding. You have to stake out the backside here. That's why it's all, kind of floppy. But so they have ones that have like a crisscross frame. I'm sure y'all have seen them, and they just stand alone completely. Tents are more insulated. You're on the ground, so you don't have as much wind going under you as you do in a hammock, and you do have to have reasonably flat ground. Now, hammocks, and this looks like all negative stuff because I had bad experience with hammocks, but I'm not bashing hammocks completely. So they're becoming pretty popular. They're fairly lightweight, like the tent. They can be heavy though. So this was my inexperience. So I had a friend who was like, oh, you're going to hike the AT. Well, do you want my hammock to take? And I'm like, sure. So she gave me an E&O double nest, which is pretty heavy in itself. Not too bad, but then she gave me the slap straps to go with it, which, adds a little bit more there. And then I was like, well, wait, I need a bug net and a rain fly, right? So if I'm already saving money with this, I want to save more, so I'm going to make my own. So I got some drop cloth from Lowe's and got some duct tape out and decided I'm going to make my own rain fly. So I did, and that adds up too. And then I was like, well, I need a bug net, so I got some sheer panels from Walmart and sewed it and made myself a nice little bug net. And all of this added up together was about 4 pounds. And then consider that I had never not only been on an overnight backpacking trip, but I had never camped in a hammock before. So my first night on the AT, it was sagging, my butt was touching the ground, I was cold, and so I just decided this is not for me. And after a week, I swapped to the tent. However, they make very lightweight backpacking hammock setups, and you can get like under quilts to keep you warm. You can sleep on a foam pad inside the under quilt. I mean, there are a lot of ways that you can make it work, but for me, I needed a tent. I needed something that I was more used to, and I like to lay down and cook. I like to be able to spread out my gear. So hammocks are awesome, especially for people who have just had, well, not just, but people who can't camp anymore because of like back surgery and stuff. A lot of them have been able to camp again because of hammock camping. So, and it's so nice to have the pressure off of your knees and your feet and all of that. And maybe I'll try it again someday, but for now, it's not for me. But you do have to consider where you're going to be. Are you going to have flat? Are you going to have flat ground? Are you going to have trees? Or so when you're picking out your shelter. Then there were tarps. People literally just did that and slept under their tarp. That takes a lot more skill. It's going to be more lightweight than a hammock or a tent. But you don't have the protection from the bugs, and I don't know. Seems like you could get wet a lot easier if you're not as skilled, setting that up. So again, terrain, weight, space, weather, bugs, cost, and comfort. Those are all things that you have to decide when you're choosing a shelter. But you have to decide what works for you. All right, sleeping bags. You have pretty much 2 options: down bags and synthetic bags. So this is actually a dry down bag, so it's treated down. That way, if it gets damp, it's not going to completely go kaput on you. But that's the scary thing about down bags, is that if they get wet, there's no warmth factor to it anymore. It's not going to keep you warm. With down bags, like if you're hiking the trail, you can't wash them in every town that you come to. So if you're worried about stinking, which you shouldn't if you're out there, because you're going to stink anyway, that's something to consider. Synthetic bags you can wash normally. Synthetic bags are very bulky, and they're going to be a lot heavier than down. So for me, I was trying to save space and weight, so I went with the down bag. That's my sleeping bag in the shelter on the first night. And the first night I stayed in the shelter, and there were folks that were telling me, yeah, if you sleep with your head to the opening, the mice won't run across your face. And I was like, oh, that's cool, just my feet instead. That's great. But actually, the first night that I was in the shelter, one ran across my back, and I was like, all right, this is gonna be a great experience. But they get aggressive in Maine. Like, they'll start trying to fight you for your food when you're cooking in the shelter. They come at you. Like, normally they'll kind of run away when they see you, but these are like, I want that food. All right, so sleeping pads. I started with what's on the left there, the blue foam pad. And at the beginning, I was like, I'm tough. I don't need a sleeping pad. Sleeping pad are for babies. Like, I don't need that. Well, yeah, you do. When you're out there for a long time and when you want some comfort, a sleeping pad is nice to have. So the foam pads are kind of bulky. They are typically more lightweight, and with those closed cell foam pads, you can trim some off of it to lighten it up. They are durable, so you can throw it down and sit on it and eat lunch, not worry about it popping and all of that. They're less comfortable. If you're anything but a back sleeper, then just don't. They're a lot cheaper. I think I paid $15 for the blue one, and for this one on the right, I paid like $160 or something like that. But I just got to where I couldn't sleep, and sleep is so important, when you're hiking, when you're in a stressful situation and you're out, So if you sleep on your stomach or on your hip, just don't even try it. Okay, so the inflatable one. Now the thing with that, the blue pad, you can just roll out and you're done. This, you've got to take a few minutes to blow it up and all of that. They are typically heavier, but I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go with the best. And so I got one that was exactly the same weight as my foam pad. They are more compact. I mean, you can see a lot of the times the closed cell foam pads are going to have to be attached to the outside of your pack, where these will usually fit on the inside. Now, sometimes folks say it sounds like you're sleeping on like a Fritos bag or something. Oop, sorry. Whoops. Yeah, my bad. But anyway, so it sounds like you're sleeping on a Doritos bag or something, but it's worth the noise. And they're not as durable, so they'll pop a lot easier. More expensive, but they're so much more comfortable. All right, water. So is water safe to drink out there on the AT?
It depends.
Right? I don't know. Do you like having diarrhea in the woods? That's the bigger question to ask yourself. So it's so, yeah, perfect. Just go for it then. So, you know, it might be safe, but there are just very easy ways to treat your water that there's no point in just drinking water that you don't know whether it's safe or not. So you can filter it, you can add chemical drops to it or other chemical treatments, or you can just boil it. So I started out with a Sawyer squeeze. The way that works, that bladder there on the bottom, that's what you put the dirty water in, and then you just squeeze it. It goes through that filter part at the top, and there actually is a connection that you can just drink straight from it. You can screw that Sawyer onto like a smart water bottle and just, you know, drink straight from it if you want to. You can put the mini Sawyer in line with your drinking tube, kind of like this is, and just put dirty water in the bag, and, you know, you essentially drink it clean, you know, drink it through the filter. The Sawyer is very versatile, and it's lighter. I think it's like 4 ounces for that filter. But I ended up swapping to the Platypus Gravity Works filter. And the reason I did, I guess I'm lazy, but you can put your dirty water here and hang it up, and whoop, gravity does the work for you. So I just really liked that. I saw somebody that had it in my Sawyer bag. The bladder, it busted, and then there's a ring in there. They tell you not to over-tighten. I over-tightened, and so I was just like, enough of that. Now this one is more expensive than the Sawyer, but it just was convenient for me. Let's see, oh, here it is. So you put your dirty water up here, it flows down into this, and then you connect that right to your tube that goes to your hydration right there. So that's what I did. I mean, there are so many things that you can do. All right. All right, Aquamira is probably the most most common chemical treatment that I saw out there. The thing with this, it's going to be lighter than a filter, but you're going to have to wait. So if you're impatient, this is not the way to go, because you get to the water source, you're out of water, you're thirsty, you put the drops in, and you sit and wait. So that just wasn't for me. I recommend, whatever you do, having some kind of bottle to capture your water, because these bladders don't work well. You put it in the water and the pressure of the water pushes it in. So have something to scoop your dirty water with. And then there's good old boiling. The thing with boiling is you have to wait even longer than the drops, because you've got to wait for it to heat up and then cool down, and then pour it into something and watch it spill on the ground, all of that precious water that you've treated. So, all right, food and cookware. The thing you have to ask yourself is, do you want to cook or not? I just feel like there's something to be said for a warm meal, you know, after you've been walking and you're tired. So I wanted to cook, but you can save weight by not cooking and not having cookware. So if you're not going to cook, the things that you might eat are jerky, ramen noodles. I say ramen, not ramen, I know. Meat full packs, tuna, salmon, Spam, chicken, granola bars, Carnation instant breakfast. I mean, just a lot of stuff. Anything that you could put on a shelf and it can sit there for a while, you know, and that is somewhat lightweight. I don't like taking cans of food out on the trail. And then if you're going to cook, you've got all the options of not cooking, plus, you know, all of this other stuff. So I ate a lot of pasta and rice sides, and I dehydrated a lot of vegetables before I left, so I had somebody send them to me. But in a situation, you know, where you're leaving your home, you know, you may have some of that already in your pack. But if you are into dehydrating food and making your own backpacker meals, I would recommend checking out backpackingchef.com. That's where I got a lot of my recipes. And ground beef dehydrated is like wonderful when you're out there, because you never have ground beef while you're out there. So, all right. So as far as stoves go, I would say the most common type stove you see out there is a fuel canister stove. I use the MSR Pocket Rocket. So this was mine right here, this top part. I think it's 4 ounces. And then my pot is like 3 or 4 ounces. Now, with my pot, and I might be getting ahead of myself, but you can get like the fancy titanium. It costs more. This is an aluminum grease pot. And I know, oh, you're not supposed to eat off of aluminum. Well, you're not wearing deodorant for 6 months, so you're getting your aluminum intake like this. That's what I said. But anyway, so it's just an old grease pot, and I modified the knob a little bit. So this is the knob that came on it, like a plastic one. But I wanted to be able to cook on the fire, so I put, you know, that on there. And then this is a pot cozy. So it's just made out of Reflectix material and Reflectix tape. And it saves fuel, because you boil your water, you add your pasta and stuff, stir it, put your pot in here and then close it and wait 10 minutes and your food's ready. Otherwise, you're going to have to keep your fuel on and the fire going and cook it all the way through. All right, so and another thing about these, you can control the heat. So if you want to simmer, you know, you find some fiddleheads and you're like, I think I'll simmer me up some fiddleheads tonight. Well, then you can, you know, control the flame with this. They are a little unstable, a little top heavy, you know, once you get your pot up there and everything. I knocked off one meal, so only one, and then I learned. So, then you've got like alcohol stoves. I made one out of a tuna can just to, you know, just because. I don't love these because if you knock this over, all of that fuel, you know, the fire's going to follow it. And they just kind of freak me out, to be honest. I can't control the flame. But if you want a really cheap stove, there you go. Buy a can of tuna or cat food, punch holes, you can pour heat in there and burn that, and that's your stove. So they're just a little scary to me. And then there are other options. You've got stoves now that are fueled by wood and pellets and things like that, or you can just cook on a fire. With those options, you know, you've got to consider, is the wood going to be wet, you know, and even if it is, like, you can crunch up ramen noodles, put the spices on it and eat it like chips. I've done that when I was too lazy to walk 2 more miles to the water source and I stopped for the night and I'm like, I'll just eat them, you know, crunchy. It's all good. All right, and then, yeah, my grease pot, I had a titanium spork, and then this collapsible cup, because I like to drink my coffee while I'm eating, so, I don't know, and this had, like, increments of measurement on the inside, so when you're cooking a backpacker meal and it tells you, oh, well, add 1 1/4 cup, you're like, I don't know how much that is, you know, and you end up with something too soupy or, you know, too dry, and so this kind of helps you out a little bit. All right, clothes. So everyone says out there, cotton kills, you know, because cotton's going to hold in moisture, and if it's cold, you're going to get hypothermia and die, right? So you don't want to do that. So we all say cotton kills, wear synthetic clothes. Well, we were sitting around a campfire one night, and there was this guy that he was doing a section hike, and he had thru hiked in the 80s. And he's like, all you kids talking about cotton kills. He's like, must be that GMO cotton y'all have. So I thought that was pretty funny. But as far as outfits go, you have 2. You have your daytime outfit, and you have your pajamas, and that's it. There is no fashion show. And, you know, I mean, you have to have what it's going to take for you to be comfortable in a situation where you're having to leave your home. But underwear, I recommend have 2 pair. You know, you can always wear them one way, turn them inside out, wear them the other way. And then so it's like 4 days, and you can wash one in between that and hang it up to dry if you have to. Ex Officio is a great brand if y'all are not familiar with that. It's common out there, I guess. Wool socks. I recommend 2 for hiking and 1 for sleeping, and I wore like the big, you know, thick ones to sleep in, and then 2 thin ones to hike in. And then a puffy coat with a hood is nice. So this was mine. It's just, you can stuff it into itself, and it was synthetic, not down. All right, frog togs. So that was my rain gear. $20 at Walmart for top and bottom. Not very fashionable. 0% fashionable. Durability, you know, as long as you're not going through briars and stuff and you don't have your pack on and snatch it, because that's what I did, you know, I like snatched the top to straighten it up and it kind of ripped. As long as you're not in briars or snatching around on it, it holds up just fine. That's where I sewed it with a needle and floss and patched it right up, and it was good to go. It worked just fine. So functionality and repairability, 100%. It's pretty good. Danger. Okay, so in any situation where you're going to be out and about, there are going to be dangers, right? So some of the things that I had to consider on the trail were bears, snakes, weather. So these are all things, you know, depending on your situation that you need to consider, you're going to have to deal with. And then hitchhiking for me. So, you know, I always had like a knife or pepper spray or both in my hands, you know, ready to go when I had to hitchhike. And then the trail itself, you know, what kind of area are you going to be in? Is it going to be rugged terrain? Is it going to be, you know, flat and easy to navigate? And bugs. So the mosquitoes drove me crazy. I never had a tick attached to me. I had 2 crawling around on my stuff. I had some spider bites, but no poisonous spiders. But the mosquitoes just like, oh, they tore me up. And you can get your gear treated with permethrin. I mean, there are different ways to, you know, avoid it, but I just toughed it out. I don't want to spray DEET on myself every day and walk around. So, but I sent that picture to my mom, and I was like, Mom, check this out. And she's like, oh my gosh, what happened to his foot? And I was like, Mom, that's my foot. Because your feet get so swollen while you're walking and stuff. But so my first aid kit. Now, keep in mind, I was close enough to where I could get to a town within a day or 2. So I had a very minimal first aid / repair kit. Pain relievers. You don't want to be dependent on that, though. So if you're walking too much, you need to just tone it back, not pop vitamin I, which is ibuprofen. Anti-diarrheal. I learned that you need more than 2 pills, diarrhea pills, okay? So if you're going to cover the base, cover the base. Super glue, Band-Aids, bandana, antibiotic ointment, just your typical stuff. Repairs, needle, thread, floss, duct tape, knife. Somebody told me Gerbers are for babies, or Gerbers for babies or whatever, but that's what I carried. What? And then, yeah, thank you. And then cord. So I had cord anyway because you have to hang a bear bag. I have this little cord right here. It's called Z-line. You have to hang a bear bag with your food in it. So hygiene. You know, you got to feel good. So baby wipes and baby powder were like my saving grace. Dorothy was talking about like, well, what do you do for your hair? You know, and it's like sprinkle baby powder in it and comb it out, and it just feels better. So wet wipes, even if you've got them sitting in a bag forever, you can always re-wet them, and they're still good to go. Something for chafing, that really is a bad experience if you don't have anything to yeah, that hurts. You see, okay, so hikers have this thing we call the hiker shuffle, you know, where you're like, you're sore and you're walking around. And so one day we were sitting in town and I was like, wow, that dude's got an intense hiker shuffle going on. And he's like, you know, and we're like, no, that's chafing. Like, that's not just regular pain, that's chafing pain. So, and your toilet paper, you want to keep a lot of your stuff in Ziploc bags. Like, even now I hoard Ziplocs. Like, if I have a used one, I'm like, well, I might use that for something. You know, it's like, I don't know, I'm in that mindset now. But toilet paper does no good when it's all soaking wet. And then you're going to have to, you know, use something else. So put a lot of stuff in Ziplocs. Brush your teeth when you're out there. Brush your teeth. Okay, electronics. So I just had my headlamp. I had extra batteries and like backup battery chargers. I started with this real little bitty one here, and then I went to this one. But that's all I did to charge my cell phone, and those are the only electronics that I dealt with. And then have like extra chargers and bricks, so when you know, if you do get to a power source, you can plug everything in at once. You're not waiting on one thing to charge and then the next one. All right, now what do you put all this stuff in? So you got all your gear. A lot of times I know you can get technical bags and whatever, but backpacking packs are pretty good. You know, they're designed to go a long ways with them. The one that I have is actually molded to like grab your hips. So see how it's not floppy here? It like actually it grabs on. It's got nice little pockets here for stuff that you want to have easy access to, and they're nice to have. And as far as waterproofing your pack goes, these bags are awesome. So this is like a contractor bag just shoved down in there. And what I would do is I would put my sleeping bag and anything that I didn't want getting wet, like so my clothes. These are all my synthetic clothes. This is a dry bag, but I still put it in there. I'm like, I would rather overdo it than not do it enough because you don't want wet stuff out there. So I would shove that all down, and then I would roll this up real tight. And then I would put on top like my water filter because obviously it's getting wet anyway. Maybe my cookware. Well, my cookware was in this food bag too. So, but that's kind of what I did. And then on the outside, a pack cover or a rain cover for your pack. You see all the repairs with duct tape? All right. So, and these are just some pictures from the experience. So that's a white blaze, and then it's funny because you can see, I don't know, some of y'all in the back might not be able to, but there's a little white blaze right there too. And it's pretty obvious to me where this path goes. You know, it's like pretty straight, and normally your blazes are a little more spread out than that. And I feel like the volunteers like have this joke. They're like, haha, we'll put these real close together, and then the part where they really need to know where the trail is, we'll make them spaced way, way far apart. So, so again, that was the first day, the first white blaze up there on Springer Mountain. That was just a snake. I watched him crawl past my tent, and then he went up in the tree, and so got a picture of him. So this is Cap, and he hiked the AT. He's the one that gave me my trail name, Dixie. He was like, we hiked around each other for a few days, and he was like, you know, I don't remember your name, but when you're not around, we call you Dixie. And I was like, well, that'll work, you know, that works. But he did the AT in 2015 when I did, and then he did the PCT. He just finished it. And he's got this little Packing It Out campaign, and they picked up 1,100 pounds of trash from Georgia to Maine while they were hiking the Appalachian Trail. And I don't remember how much they got on the PCT. It was less, but so that's what he's doing there, is picking up trash around the shelter. So that's one of the things I learned. Like, people out there care about nature. You know, they care about it. And this is just, I was so excited of how tall the ferns were in Virginia. I was like, this is so cool. You know, I mean, they're like almost as big as me. And that's McAfee Knob in Virginia, so that's like one of the most photographed parts of the trail there. And I took that one just for my mom and dad, sent it to them. These are some of the other people that I met out there. I started alone, so you can do that. It's not scary. There are a lot of other people out there that you'll make friends with. And not every day is a good day, and it's like that in life, right? Like it's never always going to be sunshine and butterflies and birds singing. You know, sometimes you're going to have a really crappy day at whatever you're doing. And you just have to remember it's easy to quit something on a bad day. And, you know, with the trail, I told myself I'm not quitting when it's raining and I'm cold. I'm going to be sitting on the most beautiful lookout and have everything going right. And if I'm like, this isn't for me, then it's time to quit. But like on this day is not the day to quit. And these are some of the people that I met along the way. Everyone's holding up their hands because we were crossing mile 800, but they were being jerksters and holding up 9 fingers, but that was mile 800. Now you'll see the real young looking girl right here. She was 9 when she started the trail. Her family of 5 kids and 2 parents all did the trail together, and they're hammockers. They actually live in Fort Worth, so I'm going to visit them Sunday. But it was 9 to 22 were the ages of the kids, and it was just incredible to me that they did it all together. And that was the trail one day, just rebar up a rock. That was the trail one day, wooden wedges after it had rained that are all slick and algae covered. That was the trail one day, just a big old mud hole. That was the trail crossing a river in Maine. So anywhere New Hampshire and south, for the most part, they believe in footbridges. And then once you get to Maine, they're like, you got it. You can walk across the river, no big deal. And this is in New Hampshire, that's the White Mountains. And here's a prime example. It's like, where are my white blazes now? You know, like, where's the trail? But they do have these little cairns here, but they kind of blend in with the rest of the rocks.
The weight it doesn't kill you is the right way.
Do I? Yeah.
It doesn't kill you.
Exactly. So that's a gray jay. I had never heard of these, but I started seeing them in New Hampshire, and they're like the begging dog of the bird on the Appalachian Trail. So, like, you're laughing because I know you saw them. Like, you'll crinkle a wrapper, and you hear, and you're just like, and then another one, you know, and you're like, okay, I guess I'm going to be sharing my food, you know. But it was cool because you put it in your hand, and they'd come, and they'd get it. So, of course, I had to selfie with the bird. But we were just thrilled with this. We just thought it was so cool. All kinds of berries out there. Wild ponies in Virginia. Okay, so for all of you who are like, I'm too old to hike the Appalachian Trail, bull, you're not. This lady on the right is 72 years old, and she finished her THRU-HIKE the same year I did. And the lady on the left is her daughter, who is in her mid-40s. So whether it's hiking the Appalachian Trail or any other dream that you have in life, it's never too late to start. Just get out there and do it. And if you can't do it right now, take a step in the right direction towards it. You know, they did. She did it. There was a guy out there named Fig who was hiking the AT for the 3rd time, and I think he was like 73 or something. That was Sunset, New Hampshire. Okay, so have y'all ever seen the movie The Never-Ending Story? You know the white horse? I know what it feels like to be that white horse now, because every time I tried to get out of this hole, it just like, and I was going what felt like 70 miles per hour, you know, up to that spot, and then it was just like, so yeah, that was not a fun day. This was us being hobos. You know, it's very humbling to be out there. You know, you get so appreciative of having a spot to sleep under somebody's table, or, you know, in a parking lot, you know, to be able to cook and like have flat space, you know. And we actually got in trouble because this was near Shenandoah National Park, so one of the park rangers came by and just screamed at us, and he's like, people are going to drive by and see y'all. And we're like, oh, wow, I'm sorry to ruin their nature experience, you know. But they don't like that for you to be seen, so. This was the trail, just straight up. You know, I didn't know when I signed up to do the AT that I was also signing up to swim and rock climb and all kinds of other things, but that's what it is. So trail magic. This is one of the most glorious things that you get as a thru hiker. Trail magic it can be anything from a Coke can, you know, like a can of Coke left on the side of the road, or like sometimes people leave coolers with snacks in them, or just water in a spot that's dry. Like maybe somebody on their way to work will drop off 10-gallon jugs of water, and then on their way home pick them up and refill them and drop them off again the next morning. And these people out there in this community, they just love the thru hikers. And I was just blown away. I'm like, why are you being nice to me? Like, you don't know me, you know, why are you being nice to all of us? But people are just very selfless. So it kind of, the whole experience kind of, I don't want to be cliche and say, you know, restores your faith in humanity, but it kind of does. So this group here is from Wisconsin, and they come down on their vacation every year. They put their money together to go on vacation. They're all disabled in some form or fashion, and have decided they don't want to do the trail themselves, but they want to help others do it. And they come down there and they cook all weekend long, every Easter weekend. and they just food and food and food. And you can camp out there, you can eat a meal and go. That was, that's in Smoky Mountain, Charlie's Bunyan. I don't know if y'all have ever been to Smoky Mountains. And the trail again. And the trail again. And that doesn't look very steep in the picture, but it's like moose track. And the good thing, I didn't finish until like October 19th, and it was kind of later than most hikers do, but I got to see the fall in Maine, so that was pretty neat. So at the mile markers, we all create something that shows, whether it's with sticks or moss or rocks, but this was mile 2100, so that was like my last mile marker I was going to see, and I was by myself for that one. And then Katahdin. So because I finished so late, this is what the path looked like on Katahdin, just thick ice. I didn't have any micro spikes. I had my regular trail runners, and that was a beast. So that's us going up. That's just icy, snowy boulders, and you're like climbing on those and sliding around. It was crazy. One of the guys fell coming down some rebar because they had where you had to pull up on the rebar, and I could see my hand holding the rebar, but I couldn't feel my hand holding the rebar. It was like 21 degrees there, 21, 22, and it really windy. So, but he was coming down, and his pants leg got hung in the rebar, and his butt slipped on the ice, and he ended up like hitting his ribs real hard on the rock. But he was like, "Let's just get down before my adrenaline, stops rushing." So that was it. That was like, boom, the sign, and then the finish. And so next up, Pacific Crest Trail. So I'd like to do that starting in April, hopefully. No, I'm going to do it. It's going to happen. I'm already there in my mind, so I might as well say it's going to happen. But so when I got done, I felt like this new inspiration for life, and felt driven to get stuff done. And so I started, I've got a vlog, I've got a YouTube channel, and I recorded a lot of the trail while I was out there, and I've been doing informational videos once a week since. And then I wrote an ebook because, like I said, I had never been on an overnight backpacking trip. So I was Googling all kinds of, I Googled how to prepare to hike the Appalachian Trail, And so I thought, well, why don't I create an ebook to help other people prepare for it? And so I've got the ebook. If you want to contact me by email if you have any questions about any of this stuff, or while we're here, of course. And questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Your blog is cut off. What's the name?
It's homemadewanderlust.com.
Real quick, Jessica, if people ask you questions for the video, please repeat the question when you answer.
Okay, sure. Yes.
So just as an order of magnitude, how much does the gear cost? Is this a $500 thing, or a $1,500 or $2,000?
Okay.
More or less.
So in general, how much does gear cost? I had nothing. I had zero. So for me, I think to get out on the trail, it was like $1,500. It could be a lot more than that. If you want to get into like ultralight, which I would really love to have all of that gear, then it's going to be a lot more. And if you're, you can cut more corners than I did. Like I said, my friend, my pack was like $200 to $300. My sleeping pad was like $160. My tent was like $350. So if you add all that together, he spent like $100 on his pack, $150 on his tent, and $50 on his sleeping pad. So right there shows you the difference, But then I made changes while I was out there because I wasn't familiar with my gear. So I swapped my sleeping pad. I swapped my water filtration. I swapped from the hammock that was given to me to my tent. So it ended up being closer to like $3,000 for me total. Any others?
Would you recommend northbound or southbound?
It depends on, all right, so yeah, would I recommend northbound or southbound? It depends on what kind of experience you're looking for. So if you're looking for, I'll be alone, but if I want the opportunity to hang out with other people and stuff, northbound is what you want. There are a lot more people going northbound, but there are some people that go southbound. You're still going to have folks around. It's just not going to be as much. So if you're sure that you want that solitude and you're comfortable with all your gear and, not thinking like, hey, I might need help because I'm inexperienced, then southbound would be fine. There are also people who do what they call a flip-flop. So they might hike northbound to Harper's Ferry, and because they don't like the cold weather, they'll go ahead and flip up to Katahdin in Maine and then hike southbound back down to Harper's Ferry. So that way they get like good weather the whole trip. And it's still called a through hike. If you do it in one calendar year, or in the 12-month period, it's a through hike. So, but if you complete the trail, regardless if it took you 1 year or 50, you're a 2,000 miler. So, but as far as the through hike goes, it doesn't matter what direction or if you do it, flipped around. So, and then there are other things to consider too. When you start in the 100-mile wilderness, you're like 7 to 10 days without come into a place where you can resupply. So you have to be pretty confident in yourself. And also I hear the black flies are terrible up there when you start, because you can't start up there until June 1st-ish, like Memorial Day weekend. Where at Katahdin, if you're going to start and make it to Baxter State Park on time, you really should start the latest, I would say, the beginning of May. But I started March 29th. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. And yes, ma'am, you?
The trail runners, are they, how are they on rough terrain? Do you feel like they're as good as good for lightweight hiking?
Because mine caused me the issue, I only had mine for like a week span, my boots. So they just felt uncomfortable to me, you know what I mean? They felt like big and bulky and I don't know. I was fine with trail runners though. In like Pennsylvania, everyone talks about it so rocky, like Rocksylvania is what they call it. And honestly, New Hampshire is really rough and rocks. So, but I was fine. I mean, they wear out faster than boots do for sure. But I didn't care if, my toe was poking through. I was like, well, it's like air conditioner to my foot, it's more breathability. Yes, sir.
How is your preparation going to be different for PCT, and are you going to try to blog from out there or other technology?
So the difference in AT preparation and PCT preparation, that's a very good question. I'm still kind of learning the differences between the PCT and the AT. So I've got, Cap and some other people that have already done both trails. So I've been asking them, and I think water is going to be a big issue. The first 600 miles are in the desert, so that's going to be a whole new world. But I think physically it's going to be easier is what I've heard. I don't really know. I know that I need an ice axe and I know that I need micro spikes out there. So there are going to be some things that are different, but I'm not 100%. I haven't completely planned it out yet. And I didn't get my first piece of gear for the AT until February, and I started in March. So it's not something that, takes a whole long time to plan. And you don't plan every stop along the way. Your life would be miserable if you did that. That's the glory of being out there, is you have the freedom to do whatever you want. So if you send yourself a package to each town, then you have to go into that town. And you might be hiking with a cool group of people that you don't want to go into that town. You want to keep hiking with them, but now you've tied yourself to that, So, and you also asked if I'm going to be blogging and vlogging out there, and yes, I will be. So I'll be posting once a week from now until then, and I'm going to start eventually covering some of the preparation for the PCT on my vlogs as it gets a little bit closer. And I just do that when I get to a town. I drop all of the files into a Dropbox app, and then I've got somebody that pulls them out and edits the video and posts for me. Yeah, so I don't do it, but I blog myself while I'm out there. It's just not as steady. It's whenever I am propping my feet up and taking a break. So, yes, sir?
Miles per day, what were some of your averages depending on terrain, and how long did it take?
Okay, so the trail took me, how long did it take, and what were my average miles in different terrains was the question. So it took me a little over 6 months, but I'm kind of a bad gauge. It takes 5 to 6 months on average, but I had to go home for a few days because my brother was graduating, and then my dog got sick, and so I got in a rental car and rushed home from Pennsylvania, and not driving after months, and then you're getting on the interstate, trying to go 80, you're just I can't do this right now, and you're the grandma that everyone's honking at, it was bad, but she passed away before I even made it home, and so I got home, and that's when I was bad off with the plantar fasciitis, so I kicked my feet up and took a week off then. And I also, while I was near DC, I knew a girl that had a friend who had a floor that we could sleep on so that I could see the Declaration of Independence on Independence Day and the fireworks show in DC. So I did that. And then a guy that I was hiking with at the time in New York had a friend who let us crash on the floor, and I got to see New York City. So I did a lot of side things. I tried to stretch it out as long as I could. And we all said the last one to Katahdin wins, because you kind of did the most with your journey. But the tentative cutoff date is October 15th, and that's weather dependent, and I didn't summit till the 19th. So, and they should have closed it probably, honestly, but I'm glad they didn't, because they would have had to shoot me to keep me from climbing Katahdin after I'd gone that far. And then average miles per day, depending on terrain. So when I first started, I was doing 7 to 8 miles per day because I wasn't used to that. When I was going up the steps at Amicalola, it feels like there are 50 million steps, and there are really 600. But I was like, how am I ever going to get to Maine? I can't even walk stairs, But I did, and that's one thing people stress about. They're like, oh, I have to get out there and bust out 20 miles per day. You're not going to do that from the beginning. You're going to hurt yourself, and you're going to end up going home. So you build up slowly. The most I ever did was 33 in a day, but that was in pretty flat area. Yeah. Well, and the downhill sometimes can be more rough on your joints and stuff because you're just and I had trekking poles, but they're up on Katahdin somewhere. They were frozen open when I got above tree line, I didn't need them anymore. So I was like, man, it's been a good run. And I propped them up against a tree joking because I'm like, they'll be here when I get back. Well, because of all the snow, I think, I couldn't see the blazes. So I think I kind of came down a little bit different of a way and I never saw them again. Because normally I would just collapse them and attach them to my pack. But it was so cold that they were frozen open and I couldn't close them. So, but anyway, trekking poles really help with the
Trail magic.
down.
You left trail magic.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I was doing. Was leaving trail magic. But so I would say on average I did like 18 to 22 miles per day, like just once I got in a good pace. Now you've got that, and then you hit New Hampshire and you hit the whites, and you're like, oh yeah, tomorrow will be a 20-mile day. No, it'll be about half that if you're lucky, because the whites are rough and they just knock you down. Sir?
What are the whites?
The White Mountains, they're in New Hampshire. It's just the White Mountain Range. So you got the Green Mountains in Vermont that are all pretty and they're still not that difficult to hike and everything. And then you get to the White Mountains and they're like way more rugged and really beautiful views, but they'll put a hurting on you. There are a lot of people who make it to New Hampshire, which is one state before Maine. They've been through 13 of them and they quit. I knew several people that quit in New Hampshire in the whites. So they'll take it out of you. So, yes, sir.
Did you learn anything about, I guess, your physiology, posture, how to walk, how to, different terrains and stuff like that, health-wise?
Okay, so the question is, did I learn more about my physiology and how to properly walk and things like that and carry the weight?
Yeah. Posture-wise?
Not really. I mean, I have terrible posture in general, so I think it maybe helped a little bit because my back, I don't know what was going on, and I probably should have gone to the doctor, but my back was hurting before I went out there, and then after I got done, it wasn't anymore. So I was like, well, it'll either get stronger or it'll get me off the trail, So maybe naturally you kind of do. I mean, I guess the pack kind of forces you to be upright, yeah. But as far as the trekking poles go, I had no idea how to use them. So when I started, I was like, I feel like a weirdo, And I was like, how do you use these? And they're like, well, just start with one, like a walking stick, and then it'll get, more natural to you. And it does. And a lot of people, do opposite. And then a lot of people, when they're going uphill, say that if you plant it like behind your heel on the same side, which felt a little awkward. But so I tried both ways, and honestly, I was just like, whatever comes natural is what I'll do. So, any other questions?
Did you have any run-in with dangerous animals or dangerous people or accidents?
Okay, did I have any run-ins with dangerous animals, people, or accidents? I know you mean accidents like somebody's injured or whatever. I never really dealt with any of that, like anybody's fallen down and broken something and we had to get them off trail. But as far as dangerous animals, yes, I had never seen a bear outside of a car before. This is so embarrassing, y'all. And so anyway, this bear comes walking up, and we had seen signs for an aggressive bear in this area, don't camp here, and we're like, all right, well, we won't camp, but we're hiking through. But there was a spring, and we needed to get some water, so we stopped for some water, and I have my little bottle, and I'm down scooping water up at the spring, and I hear this noise, and I'm like, what in the world? I thought somebody had gone to use the bathroom, and this bear is like coming towards us, and he's just steadily walking towards us. So the folks that had been out there and seen bears are like, he's not supposed to be doing that. Like, he should be afraid of us right now. And I'm like, oh, but it's so cool. Like, let him get closer, It's all right. And he's like, no, this probably isn't good, And so he was kind of like watching and everything, and the bear's getting closer. And so he gets behind a tree, and it's like from me to you right there. And so he gets behind the tree, and I'm like, well, I want to see what this guy's doing, So I stepped from one rock to the other in the spring just to kind of see around. And when I did, he looks up at me, and he's like, oh, did you just advance me? And instead of being like, hey, bear, or, trying to look like, I'm not afraid of you, I went, hey, darling, like I'm talking to a puppy. Like, what a moron, Like, you don't do that. And I don't know why I did that. I guess because I love animals and that was my first instinct, but what an idiot. So anyway, he didn't like that at all, and I made myself look like lunch. So he kind of grunted and then started running at me. And he did like 4 to 5 like bounding running steps. So of course I'm like, I think I just used the bathroom on myself, and I turn around, and what are you not supposed to do? Run. What did I do? Oh boy, and I'm getting gone. And luckily the group I'm with hiking that day, they were like, stop, Dixie, don't run. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then it's like everything I had ever read about black bear safety came back. And so I turned around, and luckily this group liked me enough to huddle with me, and like we held up our trekking poles, and this bear was so close you could see the hair standing up on his back like a dog. I mean, and when he stopped running, he did like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like a big, huge cat. And so anyway, he just stood there and looked at us, and we're all like, and he's like, well, maybe I don't want to fight 5 of y'all, So his hair kind of went down, and he kind of chilled out and started messing with the bush, and we're like, okay, we'll get water somewhere else. We got out of there. So And then I only saw one poisonous snake the whole time, a rattlesnake in Pennsylvania, which was unfortunate because we wanted to eat one while we were, like the folks I was hiking with were like, we want to eat a rattlesnake while we're out here. And they're protected in Pennsylvania. So we're like, really? Like, of course, the one that we see. But that's not common. Normally you see a lot of rattlesnakes and copperheads and things out there like that. So dangerous people. Not really. You can tell a through hiker from a section hiker from a day hiker, like the way they smell, the way they look, like and the funny thing is you don't smell the through hikers anymore because, like you smell horrible yourself. So like and I convinced myself that I smelled like basil. I was like, wow, guys, my pack smells like basil. And they're like, no, it doesn't. And like we were cooking one night at a hostel and I'd got some basil, and I was like, gosh, that smells just like me. And they're like, really, it doesn't. We promise, But anyway, so you learn, the people that are, I don't want to say supposed to be out there, but what seems normal and what doesn't. And there was one guy in a shelter that I think he was living there, and he was a little creepy. Like he was talking about how he's going to write a book about how hikers get killed on the AT and stuff. And you're just like, really, dude, But there were so many of us there. It was just like, whatever, this guy, And he was never seen again on the trail. So I was never really threatened by people. When I hitchhiked, I was just careful about who I got in with, and a lot of times I tried to hitchhike with other people, and
getting back and forth from the trail.
yes, yeah, because the trail sometimes goes directly through a town, but a lot of times it's 3 to 10 miles away, and you just don't really want to walk that if somebody will give you a ride. So, but there were people who would pick us up from hitchhiking and be like, do you want to stay at the house tonight? And they're like, we'll feed you. There was a woman in Fontana Dam, North Carolina, that picked us up, and she was like, I know what y'all need. I'm going to take you to town. I'm going to take you by the post office. I'll take you by the store. I'll take you to get some food, and I'm going to drop y'all off. And if you decide you want a place to stay tonight, a shower, a bed for each of y'all, because we've got bunks set up for hikers, I'll cook you dinner. My husband hiked half the trail, 5 years ago. My daughter did all of it in 2004, so we'll put you up. And I was like, she dropped us off, and we're like, yeah, we'll call her back, and we're going to stay with her tonight, And so there are a lot of people who just go out of their way to help you. And I called my mom, and I was like, yeah, Mom, I'm going to get to stay at a house tonight, like a real house and a real bed. And she was like, what do you mean? Do you know these people? And I'm like, well, no. But I was like, Rigga and Camel are with me. She's like, you've only known them a week, And I'm like, yeah, but that's like a year in trail life. Like, we're good. So.
Let's do one more and we'll go on.
All right. One more question.
Just checking, when you did a water crossing or you got your shoes wet or whatever, what steps did you take to dry that out? You're talking fire, hang it up in the tree, or what?
Anything you can. And that's why. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
How did you dry off?
Yes. How did I deal with my shoes when they got wet, whether it was like rain or like a river ford or something like that? Okay. So when I crossed a river, I took my shoes off. And I either crossed I had some sandals that like strap to your feet. So you can either do that or do it barefoot. You can read all day long what you should do, and then you do what really happens is real life, what you feel like is best for you. So I either did it barefoot or with sandals on, and kept them dry that way. But if they got wet when it rained, I would try to like take the insoles out and keep them under my vestibule of my tent, at night. You can also, like your socks, you can put them in the bottom of your sleeping bag, and a lot of times it'll help them dry out while you're sleeping, like the heat and everything. When you get a sunny day, you can hang them on your pack. Like I always had one pair that were dry to sleep in. And then the other two I would rotate out. So if I had one pair that was dry and my shoes were reasonably dry the next morning, then I would, wear the drier ones. But sometimes I just wear the wet ones. So, that way the heat from walking and everything would kind of dry them out that day, and then I would have two pair that were dry, So you just had to kind of balance stuff. And if your feet are wet, you do have a higher chance of getting blisters. So that's something that a lot of people struggled with out there, but luckily I didn't have issues with blisters. I had one at mile 1700, and I hadn't changed anything with my footwear, and I was like, where'd this come from? But anyway, so I guess that's it. And if y'all have any questions the rest of the time, just let me know, and I'll be happy to answer them. So. Thank y'all. I hope that y'all enjoyed that, and like I said, I will include a link to the Survival Podcast and the show that I was on in the show more below, and feel free to check it out because, like I said, this has been a big source of my inspiration, throughout the years, and we all could use a little inspiration in our lives. So we'll see y'all next time. Okay, so I am here at Amicalola State Park. And there's this nice little compartment overhead, so that's the opening, where you can put like a headlamp